All right, who is ready to take a trip to the DMV? Just kidding, it's like a root canal. Okay, seriously though, today we're looking at camera specs. Why are we looking at camera specs? Because you need to know what camera to buy. I get that question all the time, and while it's not fun teaching specs, I'd rather show a cool editing trick or how to shoot with the camera, all that fun stuff. But you gotta know this stuff. So I wanted to go over it today because it's one of the most frequent questions I get asked. How do you choose a camera? Matt, what camera should I get? It's the most broad question ever. I need to know, what is your budget? What's your application? What's your skill level? Because I can be like, what camera do you need? You need the A7S III with a 24-70 G Master lens with a pretty good recording card, memory card, to be able to access all those 10-bit 4K features. Exactly. It's going over most people's head. So I need to know those three things. What's your budget? What's your skill level? And what's your application? So your budget, if you got a $700 budget, cool. It's good to know because now you kind of know what cameras you can look at. You're not going to be looking at the A7S III because it's $3,500. So got to know your budget for one, obviously. And whenever I ask people their budget and they're like, not too expensive, I don't know what expensive is to you. For all I know, you're a multi-millionaire, not too expensive. It's $20,000 and you're going to get a Red Dragon cinema camera next week. And I'm going to be a little jealous, but not the point. Got to know your budget so you know what cameras you can even look at. Your skill level, because your skill level dictates certain things. So like 10-bit versus 8-bit. If I say those words and you don't know what it means, you kind of know your skill level. You don't need the A7S III because you're not going to take advantage of the 10-bit features. 10-bit versus 8-bit. 10-bit is a much better. I know it doesn't sound like a lot. It's like, oh, it's 2 bits. What's that going to do? A lot of difference in the quality of the video between 8-bit and 10-bit. Now, don't get me wrong. 10-bit is superb. It's beautiful, buttery footage. I don't even use 10-bit. It's overkill for this kind of stuff. You're making something like, I don't even use 10-bit. I'm on the A7 III right now. That camera doesn't even have the ability to record 10-bit. It's pretty freaking new to most cameras on the market. So if you're gonna use 10-bit, you make me jealous. My brother just got a camera this year that's 10-bit, and yeah, I'm a little jealous, but it's overkill for most people. The recording size is gonna be huge. Like I said, you have to have a special memory card just to access all of the recording modes for that camera. So 8-bit, it's gonna be most of what you need. So that's your skill level. If you just want to record videos like this, YouTube videos, maybe videos for your business, where you have a coffee shop and you want to get the cool coffee slow-mo pours, or pizza shop and you're getting the cheese pulls, that kind of stuff, it's good to know. The application, again, what do you want to record? Are you recording talking head videos like this? Because that's different than if you want to get that slow motion cheese pull from a pizza or some slow motion shots in a nightclub, because then you need slow motion and low light capability. So where to start? Let's dive in and look at this. I use B&H Photo Video to kind of research my cameras. It's, in my opinion, the best layout compared to other camera sites. Like even if you want to buy on Amazon for whatever reason, delivery speed, whatever, cool, that's fine. I don't care. I use B&H to research the specs on the camera. So right now I have the Sony A7 IV pulled up. It's $2,500. Again, I don't know what your budget is. I'm just pulling up a random camera. So this is kind of what it looks like, but you're going to scroll down here up under the recommended accessories. It'll be pulled up on overview. So it'll have all its marketing videos and the 33 megapixel Spencer with the Bions XR processor. That's fine, whatever. Click on specs. I don't care about the overview. So there's a few things you can look for in this, but first thing we're going to do is scroll down here to internal recording modes. It'll be in the, for some reason, in the still image capture section, even though it's video. I don't know. So we are going to look at the internal recording modes, not the external recording modes. That's if you're using like an Atomos external recorder. Again, don't need it. I don't even use it. Internal, that means it's recording to the SD memory card that you're going to put in your camera. So you have all of this gibberish. It's a bunch of gibberish, right? Okay, so let me break it down, make it a little easier. From here to here is 10-bit recording. Again, it's probably overkill. We don't really need to look at it, but if you want it, it's there. 10-bit, beautiful goodness, buttery footage. That's all of those sections. So you have here, it'll say, you know, all this fun XAVC, H.264, XAVC, a bunch of random letters. You're really looking at this section, 8-bit, 10-bit, 10-bit, all of these little things. So you're looking for the 8-bit section more than likely. Again, if you want to be bougie and go for 10-bit, you can look at that stuff too. It'll all make sense in a second anyways. So you're looking for this. Then you have these lines up under here. What you're looking at basically is the 4K line here, and then the 1920 by 1080 line right up under it. So you have 4K. I mean, if you know TVs even, you know, oh, it's like, do you want a 4K TV or a 1080p TV? Obviously you want the 4K TV, right? It's going to be better quality. That's basically what you're showing here. So the rule of thumb is unless you need 120 frames per second, super slow-mo, then record in 4K. Why? Because 4K gives you the ability to crop in. For instance, I recorded this clip on 4K and then I zoomed it in. So here's the full frame, and here's what you're seeing because it allowed me to crop in, reframe it a little bit, and play around with where I wanted the frame to be. So 4K gives you that ability. Like, okay, when you're shooting in 4K, here's your frame rate options. So you can shoot anywhere from 23.98 frames, 24 frames per second is what that's referred to as, up to 59.94 or 60 frames per second. If you're a video game person, you're probably like, 60 frames, that's where it's at unless you can get higher. So that's what you're looking at. And then these numbers right here is the file size that it's recording. So anywhere from 60 megabits per second up to 150 megabits per second. So when you're recording in 4K, I'm going to try to simplify all of this. This is why I said we're going to the DMV today, because it's technical and I don't like talking technical because it can get boring. So what we're looking at is the size and the frame rate. What does the frame rate mean? It's to do with slow motion. So a 23.98 frames per second, 24 frames per second shot cannot be put into slow motion. So I'm currently shooting at 4K 24 frames per second. Here's what it looks like if I try to slow this shot down to 40% speed. It gets really choppy. You can't slow down 24 frames per second. Whenever you see choppy video, that means they slowed down a video that wasn't made to be slowed down. Up to 60 frames per second though, you can slow it down to 40% speed without losing without getting any of those frame drop jumpy issues. And then under 1920 by 1080, you can get 24 frames per second all the way up to 120 frames per second. So that means you can go down to 20% real time. So it's a pretty good jump from 60% or from 40% to 20%, getting up to 120 frames per second. What do I record in? 4K or 1080p? The only time, it's my rule of thumb, use 4K unless you know you want 120 frames per second slow motion. If you're doing a cheese pull like I talked about, if you're pouring some coffee beans into a grinder and you want super slow-mo, switch it over to 1080p, put it in 120 frames per second. When I'm shooting my conferences and events, I'm typically shooting in 1080p 120 frames per second. That's what my current camera maxes out at. You might want to do slow-mo, 4K 60 frames. You'll be able to do 40%. It'll look amazing. If you need low light, it's a little bit trickier because you can't just read that information and know how the camera works with it. Again, it's kind of confusing and convoluted, and you might need to do more research when you decide the camera that you want to go with, but you can scroll up to ISO sensitivity, video, and you can see it says 100 to 51,200 or extended. But let's just look at this right now. 100 to 51,000, what does that mean? 100 is low. That means it's going to be a darker image, but a clean image. 51,000 is if like you're shooting in a nightclub and you need to make it really bright so you can actually see the people dancing. 51,000, but you're going to introduce a lot of video grain, like a lot of noise in your shot, and it's going to get really muddy looking. So it's hard to tell because this camera can go up to 51,000, but you probably shouldn't take it to 51,000 because it's going to get really grainy. So like when I started out, I had a Canon 7D. Oh gosh, I think the max limit on that one was 12,000, but it might have been lower. It was not high, but when you pushed it to 12,000 ISO, it was completely unusable. I'm talking you're throwing mud on a video and being like, look at my beautiful video. It's not usable. But on my Sony, Now it goes up to 51,000. I can use a shot at 12,000 ISO because technology. So all that to say, if you need low light capabilities, if you're not shooting videos like this, if you're shooting a video like this, cool. You might not need low light stuff. You're setting up a light. You got some lights behind you. Yeah, you're good at whatever ISO you need. If you are shooting in a circumstance where you don't control the light, or you know it's going to be low light, like a wedding reception, then you need some good low light. You might just have to research the camera. So you find a camera in your budget. Basically, like I would go on YouTube and type in Sony a7 IV low light and watch videos. You know, compare it to other cameras with the low light capabilities, because every camera is going to work differently. And again, another kind of rule of thumb, unfortunately, is the more money you spend for a camera, the better it's going to do in low light. There are some exceptions, but that's typically the rule. If I go get a $600 Sony camera, it's not going to be as good as the a7 S3 $3,500 camera. The S3 is going to way outperform that little camera in a low light situation just because it costs more. That's just the way it works. I'm sorry. One last thing I'll mention is the recording limit. So if you scroll back down here, you see this recording limit. For years, the recording limit on cameras was really low. My first camera, oh gosh, back to like 2012, 2013, the recording limit on that camera was 12 minutes. So I was shooting weddings that were typically 25 to 30 minutes, which means every time that camera got close to 12 minutes, I had to reset it, because at 12 minutes, it's just gonna stop. It's not gonna restart on its own. It's just, you're done recording at 12 minutes. So after that, they went from 12 to 30, and they stayed at 30 minutes for years. There was a couple cameras where they like really stood out because they didn't have that. But most of the time, if you had a DSLR style camera, it was going to have a 30-minute recording time limit. Now they're starting to get rid of that limit. There is no recording limit. So if you're talking on stage and you're saying, hey, I'm going to be up there 45 minutes. I want to set this camera up on the back on 4K and just press record and let it do its thing. You don't have to worry about restarting it. The cameras nowadays are starting to remove that recording limit. So you can look at the camera, whatever camera you're looking at, look at that recording limit. It's going to be right up under the recording modes here, typically. But that's what you're looking for, recording limit, see what that limit is and see if it'll work for you. Like I said, most of them, if they're not unlimited, it'll say none if it's unlimited. If it's not that, it'll say something like 29 minutes, 59 seconds. A lot of cameras have that limit in there. Whenever you're looking at a camera, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at your frame rates, you're looking at your ISO, you're looking at your recording limit. That's really all I'm looking at when I'm recommending a camera to somebody. I'm not, you know, there's nothing really too complicated about it. It's, do you want slow motion capability? What kind of lighting are you shooting in? That kind of stuff. So I really hope this video helped you out. If you have any other questions, the reason I answered this question is because I had somebody directly ask me, what kind of camera do I choose? So I really want to make a video. I could say, hey, it's kind of complicated. Go to this blog post, watch the video, read through it. It'll tell you how to research what camera you need. So if you have any questions, go to a blog post on videocreationschool.com, scroll to the bottom or on the sidebar. There is a contact form. Doesn't sign you up for the email list. It just sends me the question to my email inbox so I can add it to my queue of content so I know how to better help you create videos that convert. Until next week, I will catch you later on videocreationschool.com.